You know that feeling when someone's criticism hits you out of nowhere like a splash of cold water you didn't see coming. Maybe it was a harsh comment online, a dismissive remark at work, or even unsolicited advice from a family member. For a moment it stings, your pulse quickens, your mind races, but what if you could step back, take a breath, and respond with unshakable calm instead of reacting in the heat of the moment? That's where Stoicism comes in. This ancient philosophy, practiced by emperors and thinkers like Marcus Aurelius, teaches us to focus only on what's within our control and criticism. It's almost never one of those things. In this video, we'll walk through 22 powerful Stoic practices to help you build resilience against unexpected criticism. These aren't just abstract ideas, they're practical tools grouped into themes like perception, how you interpret criticism, response, how you choose to engage with it, and growth, how you can use even harsh words to become stronger. Whether you're dealing with casual negativity or deep personal attacks, these timeless strategies will help you stay grounded, composed, and ultimately untouchable. So let's begin. The first and most fundamental Stoic practice for handling criticism is mastering the dichotomy of control. Picture an archer drawing back their bow. They focus entirely on their stance, their aim, their release. But once that arrow leaves the string, wind, a moving target, pure chance, none of it is in their hands. Epictetus used this exact analogy to teach a simple truth: your effort matters, but the outcome doesn't define you. Criticism works the same way. You control whether you listen, how you interpret the words, and what you choose to do next. What you don't control, the opinion that sparked it. The tone it was delivered in, even the person's right to say it. Think about a time someone criticized you, maybe a boss nitpicking your work or a stranger's cutting remark online. How much energy did you pour into replaying their words, dissecting their tone, or defending yourself in your head? Now ask, did that mental spiral change anything? Or did it just drain you? Stoicism pushes us to redirect that energy. Instead of agonizing over what others say, focus on what you can actually influence: your clarity, your growth, your calm. The moment you stop handing strangers the remote control to your emotions, you reclaim your power. Ever walked into a situation already bracing for the worst, only to find it wasn't half as bad as you feared? That's the Stoic practice of Premeditatio Malorum in action. Rehearsing challenges before they happen, not to dwell on fear but to disarm it. Think of it like a mental fire drill. When criticism comes, instead of being caught off guard, you've already walked through the scenario calmly in your mind. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher, called this anticipating without dreading. He'd intentionally imagine losing his status, his wealth, even his health, not to suffer twice over, but to realize he could endure it. You can apply this to criticism by role-playing tough conversations ahead of time. Picture your coworker dismissing your idea in a meeting, or a loved one questioning your choices. Sit with the discomfort. Ask yourself, what's the kernel of truth here? What's just noise? By exposing yourself to these mental, small doses of criticism, you build immunity to the sting. It's not about pessimism, it's about preparedness. When the real moment arrives, you'll respond with clarity, not reactivity, because you've already navigated the terrain in your mind. There's a reason Marcus Aurelius often wrote his Stoic meditations while riding into battle high on horseback. He could literally see the bigger picture. Dusty roads, bustling camps, even the chaos of conflict all shrank beneath him into mere specks. He called this practice the view from above, and it's a powerful tool when criticism threatens to consume you. Imagine holding a single grain of sand in your palm. Up close, it feels gritty, solid, impossible to ignore, but step back to the shoreline and it vanishes into countless others. That's what happens when you zoom out on criticism. Ask yourself, will this remark still sting next week? Will it alter my life in a year? Most of the time, the answer is no. The heat of the moment fades, leaving only what you choose to carry forward. Picture your wisest self, the version of you who's weathered storms and emerged stronger. What would that calm, seasoned voice whisper about today's criticism? Probably something like, "This is temporary. This is data, not destiny." When you pause to see the bigger landscape, petty remarks lose their power and real lessons rise to the surface without the emotional static. Ever notice how writing something down can instantly diffuse its emotional charge? That's the magic of Stoic journaling, a practice Marcus Aurelius himself used to untangle his thoughts under pressure. Imagine criticism as a storm cloud overhead, heavy with emotion. Journaling is your way of reaching up, plucking it from the sky, and examining it calmly in your hands. Start with 3 simple questions. What hurt? What's true? What's next? The first one, what hurt, isn't about wallowing. It's about pinpointing the exact trigger. Was it the tone, the source, an old insecurity it poked at? Naming the sting robs it of its vague power. Next, what's true? Here's where you channel your inner scientist. Strip away the emotion and ask, is there a useful signal in this noise? Maybe there's a sliver of valid feedback buried under harsh delivery, or maybe it's pure projection. Either way, writing it out forces clarity. Finally, what's next? This is where you reclaim agency. Could you respond with curiosity instead of defensiveness? Adjust a habit or simply decide it's not worth your energy. Marcus wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Journaling turns that idea into action. It transforms criticism from something that happens to you into something you work through. A stepping stone, not a stumbling block. The page becomes your quiet courtroom where reason, not emotion, gets the final say. Epictetus had a simple but radical suggestion. First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. That space between impulse and action. That's where Stoic resilience is built. Think of your initial reaction to criticism like a shaken soda bottle. Open it immediately, and everything erupts chaotically. But give it just 10 seconds of stillness, the pressure settles. This is the Stoic pause in action. Picture your boss sending a terse email critiquing your project. Your fingers itch to type a defensive reply. Your jaw tightens. That's the first impulse. Epictetus warned about the raw, unfiltered reaction that often makes situations worse. Instead, try this. Set a timer for 90 seconds. Breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 4, exhale for 6. Repeat. Neuroscience shows that's often all it takes for the amygdala's alarm bells to quiet. Suddenly, that scorching reply draft feels unnecessary. Maybe you tweak a single phrase to "help me understand your perspective" instead. The criticism hasn't changed, but your relationship to it has. Start small. Next time someone's remark lands sharply, try counting 3 breaths before responding. Notice how that tiny gap shifts everything. It's not about suppressing emotion. It's about creating just enough space for wisdom to whisper over the noise of reaction. Imagine criticism as a blacksmith's hammer. It might feel like it's pounding you down in the moment, but with the right mindset, it can actually shape you into something sharper. The Stoics called this Ammaphati, the practice of loving your fate, even when it arrives as harsh words or unwelcome feedback. Nietzsche, who built on Stoic ideas, put it bluntly, "What doesn't kill my narrative makes it stronger." That's the shift from seeing criticism as an attack to treating it as friction that polishes your perspective. Think of a time someone called you out on a blind spot. Maybe it stung at first, but later you realized it pushed you to improve in ways you'd never have seen on your own. That's the hidden gift. The key is asking one simple question. Where's the kernel of truth here, even if it's buried under a pile of poor delivery? Criticism often holds a mirror to parts of ourselves we avoid examining. A colleague's nitpick about your presentation might reveal a habit of rushing through details. A friend's offhand remark could highlight a tendency to interrupt. These aren't flaws, they're signposts for growth. The Stoics didn't just tolerate obstacles, they embraced them as teachers in disguise. Next time criticism lands, try whispering, "Thank you," under your breath, not to the critic, but to the universe for handing you another chance to refine your character. After all, smooth seas never made a skilled sailor, and unchallenged ideas rarely grow stronger. Marcus Aurelius often wrote about the inner citadel, a mental fortress no external force could penetrate. Picture a stone tower standing firm against howling winds. The wind might rage, but inside, quiet, still, unmoved. That's the power of this Stoic practice. Your inner citadel isn't about shutting out the world. It's about fortifying the space where your true self resides, so criticism can't shake your core. Take the CEO who framed every harsh critique as a gift. Instead of bristling at negative feedback, she'd say, "Show me where I'm blind." Why? Because she'd built walls around her worth, not her ego. Her peace wasn't tied to others' approval. Think of your own mind like that tower. What guards the entrance? Maybe it's the unwavering knowledge of your values. Or the discipline to ask, does this critique align with who I'm striving to be? Criticism only rattles us when we leave our gates unbarred. But when you've built that inner stronghold, when you've decided, like Marcus, that no one else gets to draft your self-assessment, suddenly, harsh words become mere echoes against stone. They might linger in the air, but they can't breach your peace unless you lower the drawbridge. So ask yourself, what walls protect your peace? Are they made of brittle pride, easily cracked? Or are they built on something deeper, the unshakable truth that you, and you alone, hold the keys to your self-worth? What if the person criticizing you isn't an adversary but an imperfect ally in disguise? This is the heart of Sympathia, the Stoic practice of recognizing our shared humanity, even with those who lash out. The philosopher Hierocles visualized it as concentric circles. At the center, you, the next ring, family, then friends, community, strangers, and eventually all of humanity. The goal, to draw those outer circles inward, to see the critic not as an outsider but as someone temporarily standing in a different ring, connected to you nonetheless. Take the novelist who received a scathing 1-star review. Instead of firing back, she replied with genuine curiosity, "Your critique of the protagonist's choices really stayed with me." What would you have done differently in her shoes? The troll never expected that. Their next message was quieter, almost apologetic beneath the venom. A frustrated writer who'd felt unheard for years. This doesn't mean excusing cruelty, it means asking, what unhealed wound might be driving this person's need to tear others down? Every harsh word carries hidden context, insecurity, past pain, fear of irrelevance. When you pause to consider their circles, their struggles, their unseen battles, criticism becomes less about you and more about the tangled web of human frailty we all navigate. The Stoics didn't just tolerate difficult people, they sought to understand them, because sometimes the loudest critics are the ones who most need to be heard. Softening hostility starts with recognizing that the person across from you, no matter how sharp their words, is still holding a piece of the same fragile human story you are. Seneca had a peculiar habit. When insults flew his way, he'd dissect them like a linguist analyzing ancient scrolls. "That's not an insult," he'd say, "just noise arranged in a certain order." This is the essence of objective representation, a Stoic superpower for disarming criticism by stripping it down to bare facts. Think of it like turning a vivid, emotional painting into a simple black and white sketch. The scene hasn't vanished, but its power to provoke has. Take a moment you've experienced, maybe someone snapped. "You're so careless with details." That label, careless, carries judgment, history, maybe even shame. Now rewrite it neutrally. They noted 3 missed deadlines in the report. Suddenly, it's not about your character. It's about observable actions. This isn't denial, it's precision. Neuroscientists have found that when we describe emotions in clinical terms, my chest feels tight, instead of I'm devastated, the brain's amygdala dials down its alarm. Apply that to criticism. They were furious becomes their voice rose 8 decibels. They humiliated me shifts to they corrected my error in a group of 7 people. Like a courtroom stenographer, you're recording events without editorializing. The criticism hasn't disappeared, but its fangs have. What's left, raw data you can actually use or calmly set aside. Next time harsh words land, try this experiment. Grab paper and translate the critique into pure observation, as if you're describing a science experiment. Watch how the emotional charge dissipates, leaving behind only what you choose to keep. Epictetus once observed that our first reaction to criticism isn't just a gut response, it's a story we tell ourselves in real time. He called this the discipline of ascent, the crucial pause between hearing words and deciding what they mean. Think of it like catching a fastball barehanded. Your instinct is to wince, to brace for pain, but what if you could train yourself to catch it smoothly without flinching? That's what this practice is all about. Take the chef who overheard a diner mutter, "This is terrible." His first thought, "I've failed." But then he applied Stoic skepticism to that knee-jerk judgment. Instead of accepting the label terrible, he dissected it. They prefer less salt. That's data, not damnation. The dish hadn't changed, but his interpretation of the critique had. This shift is everything. When someone says, "You're wrong," your brain might scream, "They're attacking me." But what if you practiced replying silently with, or "They're passionately invested in the topic," or "They're working with different information"? The criticism itself is neutral until you assign it meaning. Start small. Next time you receive feedback, whether it's a terse email or a sideways glance, notice the immediate narrative your mind constructs. Then challenge it. Is this the only possible interpretation? What's a more objective way to frame this? Like a scientist examining a specimen under different lights, you'll often find that the harshest critiques lose their edge when viewed from multiple angles. The goal isn't to dismiss criticism, but to master the space between the words spoken and the story you choose to believe. After all, as Epictetus reminded us, no one can disturb your peace without your consent. Marcus Aurelius scribbled a line in his journal that would echo through centuries. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. At first glance, it feels paradoxical. How could criticism, this thing that stings and frustrates, possibly serve you? But the Stoics weren't just weaving pretty phrases. They were engineers of the mind, turning every obstacle into raw material for growth. Take the mobile app developer whose beta testers tore apart his interface. Too clunky, they said, unintuitive. His first instinct was defensiveness until he remembered Marcus' words. He flipped the critique like a coin. Instead of resisting the feedback, he asked, "What if these complaints are actually a blueprint for innovation?" The result, a complete redesign that won awards. That's the alchemy of turning the obstacle upside down. You stop seeing criticism as a roadblock and start treating it as a compass pointing toward uncharted territory. Every critique carries hidden demands. When a mentor says your writing lacks clarity, they're indirectly asking you to master simplicity. When a client calls your proposal risky, they're inviting you to strengthen your case. The Stoic question isn't, "Why is this happening to me?" but "What skill is this moment demanding?" Imagine a sculptor chiseling marble. Every strike of the hammer might seem to mar the stone, but in truth, each blow reveals the form within. Criticism works the same way. The chef who's told her flavors are too bold could wilt, or she could refine her craft, learning to balance intensity with subtlety. The key lies in reframing the critique as a teacher in rough clothing. History's most enduring ideas often emerged from friction. Beethoven composed his finest works as his hearing faded. The post-it note was born when a failed adhesive became an opportunity. Even the Stoic philosophy itself rose from hardship. Zeno founded it after losing everything in a shipwreck. So when criticism lands, try this exercise. Grab a notebook and draw 2 columns. Label the first surface complaint. Here, jot the exact words that stung. Your presentation was disjointed. Now label the second column, hidden invitation. This is where you mine for gold. Disjointed might translate to deepen storytelling skills or practice smoother transitions. The obstacle hasn't changed, but your relationship to it has. You're no longer a passive recipient of judgment. You're an active participant in your own evolution. Some of the most groundbreaking advances in science, art, and technology began with someone saying, "That'll never work." The Stoic doesn't just tolerate those moments, they lean into them, knowing friction polishes gems. Next time criticism threatens to derail you, channel Marcus on the battlefield. Stand firm, survey the terrain, and ask, how can this resistance strengthen my aim? Because the harshest feedback often carries an unexpected gift. If you're willing to unwrap it with curiosity instead of fear, what if the very words meant to discourage you could become fuel for your next breakthrough? That's the heart of this practice. A filmmaker once told me his toughest critic, the one who called his early work shallow, became his secret weapon. Every time he crafted a scene, he'd hear that voice push him to dig deeper. Years later, at a premiere, he spotted that critic in the crowd. Instead of bitterness, he felt gratitude. The critique hadn't broken him, it had remade him. That's the upside-down mindset in action. When you stop fighting the obstacle and start using it, you unlock a reservoir of resilience most people never tap into. The criticism doesn't disappear, it just loses its power to harm and gains the power to transform. Picture yourself on your last day, breath shallow, hands frail, the weight of a lifetime pressing gently upon you. Now ask, would you remember the coworker who rolled their eyes at your suggestion in a meeting? The stranger who left a snippy comment online, the relative who scoffed at your choices. Seneca wrote to his friend Lucilius with brutal clarity, "You act like mortals in all you fear, and like immortals in all you desire. We obsess over slights and snubs as if we'll live forever to dwell on them." Memento Mori, remember you must die, isn't about morbidity. It's a lens to separate what truly matters from what merely stings in the moment. Consider the CEO who kept her hourglass on her desk. Whenever criticism threatened to derail her focus, she'd flip it and watch the sand drain. "Does this belong in my final hour?" she'd ask. 99 times out of 100, the answer was no. That's the power of this practice. It shrinks petty critiques down to their true size. Seneca lamented how we live as if the time left were infinite, then suddenly wake to find it's nearly gone. He wasn't wrong. The average person spends over 5 years of their life on social media. How much of that is spent fuming over strangers' opinions, replaying conversations we can't change? Here's the irony. The people whose critiques feel earth-shattering now will likely vanish from your life entirely in a decade. Meanwhile, the energy you pour into defending yourself against transient voices could have been spent creating, connecting, or simply savoring the fragile beauty of being alive. A dying man doesn't lament the insults he failed to counter. He regrets the love he didn't express, the adventures he postponed, the peace he sacrificed to others' noise. Try this tonight. Light a candle and watch the flame. As it flickers, name 3 criticisms that gnawed you today. Then whisper, "Will this still whisper when I'm whispering goodbye?" The flame won't answer, but your gut will. Some critiques are worth heeding, the ones that help you grow, that come from those who have earned the right to speak into your life. But most, they're like graffiti on a train, loud one moment, gone the next. Memento Mori teaches us to hold our days and our dignity too dearly to hand them over to every passerby with an opinion. After all, even the harshest critic shares your mortality. Their words, no matter how sharp, are just echoes in a wind that eventually stills for us all. The Stoics didn't bury their heads in the sand. They lifted their eyes to the stars, asking not, "What do they think of me?" but, "What will I make of this fleeting, precious life?" The hourglass is always flowing. The real question is, where will you pour your attention while the sand remains? Imagine standing in the Roman Senate as your rivals hurl insults, not subtle jabs, but brutal, public mockery meant to break you. Now picture throwing your head back and laughing. That's exactly what Cato the Younger did when his political enemies ridiculed him. While others seethed or crumbled, he treated their words like background noise at a bustling market. This wasn't just confidence, it was trained indifference, a skill any of us can learn by studying Stoic role models. When criticism stings, ask yourself, what would my Stoic hero do in this situation? Think of it like having a mental advisory board of history's most unflappable minds. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, once lost everything in a shipwreck. Instead of cursing the waves, he rebuilt his life with even greater purpose. Now fast forward to modern times. If someone roasted Zeno on social media, do you think he'd fire off a passive-aggressive tweet? Or would he scroll past, already focused on his next philosophical breakthrough? The answer's obvious. These figures aren't just historical footnotes, they're blueprints for resilience. Here's how to put their lessons into practice. Next time criticism knocks you off balance, pause and visualize your chosen Stoic mentor standing beside you. Maybe it's Epictetus, who endured slavery yet taught that no one can enslave your mind. Or perhaps Musonius Rufus, who calmly debated emperors while exiled to a barren island. Ask, how would they wear this moment? Chances are they'd see the critique as either irrelevant noise or useful feedback, nothing more. A tech founder I know keeps a bust of Marcus Aurelius on his desk. When investors ripped apart his pitch instead of spiraling, he'd glance at it and think, Marcus faced mutinies and plague. This is just a spreadsheet with harsh commentary. Suddenly, the critique lost its fangs. That's the power of role models. They shrink today's problems to their true size. This practice isn't about imitation, it's about aspiration. You're not pretending criticism doesn't sting. You're reminding yourself that greater men and women have faced far worse and emerged unbroken. Their courage becomes your compass. So curate your personal Stoic pantheon. When the world says you're not enough, let Cato's laugh echo in your ears. When self-doubt whispers, borrow Zeno's clarity. These giants didn't just teach resilience, they lived it. And now, centuries later, their stories can still fortify your spirit, one challenge at a time. Here's a radical thought experiment. Imagine waking up tomorrow to discover every compliment you've ever received has been erased. Every great job, every pat on the back, every piece of praise gone. How would that feel? For most of us, it's uncomfortable even to consider. But the Stoics weren't most people. Musonius Rufus, one of Stoicism's toughest teachers, didn't just tolerate losing praise. He trained for it like an athlete preparing for a race. He'd intentionally visualize life without approval, without status, even without basic comforts. Why? Because he knew something profound. The more you cling to praise, the more criticism will shake you. This is negative visualization in action, not to breed pessimism, but to cultivate unshakable inner stability. Picture a tightrope walker. They don't practice only when the crowd is cheering. They train in silence, in wind, even imagining the rope snapping. That mental rehearsal is what makes their actual performance unshakable. You can apply the same principle to criticism. Try this tonight. Sit quietly and imagine your best work being met with utter indifference. That presentation you nailed, crickets, the project you poured your heart into, a shrug. Sit with that discomfort until it loses its power over you. The goal isn't to reject praise, it's to liberate yourself from dependence on it. When you stop needing applause to validate your worth, criticism can't knock you off balance. Now take it one step further. Write your own obituary, not the sugar-coated version full of achievements, but the brutally honest one. What would it say if you died today? She never missed a chance to be right in arguments, or he prioritized being liked over being truthful. This exercise isn't morbid, it's clarifying. Strip away the trophies, the titles, the social media likes, and ask, what's left when all external validation disappears? That's your core. That's what no critic can touch. The Roman statesman Cato intentionally wore outdated robes to court ridicule. The philosopher Diogenes lived in a barrel to prove happiness needed no audience. These weren't stunts, they were masterclasses in detaching from others' opinions. Here's the paradox: the less you fear losing praise, the more authentically you can engage with feedback. Think of a musician who plays for the love of sound, not applause. When a critic says your rhythm was off, they can nod and adjust, no ego in the way. Contrast that with the performer who craves standing ovations. Every critique feels like a personal earthquake. Negative visualization trains you to be the first musician, not the second. So next time someone praises you, savor it, then mentally file it away like a library book you know you'll have to return. And when criticism comes, you'll already know how to stand firm because you've practiced living without the opposite. The Stoics didn't just endure hardship, they courted it voluntarily to immunize themselves against life's unpredictability. That's the hidden gift of this practice. It turns the fear of criticism into a quiet confidence. After all, if you've already imagined losing every ounce of approval and found yourself still standing, what's left for any critic to take? There's a strange magic that happens when you step outside yourself and watch your life like a neutral observer. Picture this: you're in a heated meeting when a colleague snaps, "That idea will never work." Your face flushes, your pulse spikes. Now hit pause. Instead of feeling the sting, try narrating the scene as if you're a documentary filmmaker capturing the moment from the sidelines. A professional just heard criticism about their proposal. Their breath quickened, their mind began drafting defenses. Suddenly, the emotional charge dims. That's the third-person trick, a Stoic practice that creates instant emotional distance by turning you into both the actor and the audience in your own story. Epictetus framed it perfectly. You're not the script, you're the actor handed the lines. Think about what that means. When criticism comes, it's just dialogue in a scene, not the sum of who you are. A playwright can write "you're incompetent" into a character's mouth, but that doesn't make it true for the actor speaking the words. Separating the role you're playing, employee, artist, parent, from your core self is how you avoid collapsing under critique. Take the novelist who received a blistering review calling her book shallow. Instead of internalizing the label, she imagined reading about another author receiving those same words. Instantly, her defensiveness gave way to curiosity. What might an outsider learn from this critique? The feedback didn't change, but her relationship to it did. Neuroscience backs this up. Studies show that when people describe their own struggles in the third person, "Why is James feeling upset?" instead of "Why am I upset?" Their brain activity shifts. The emotional centers quiet, while the areas linked to rational problem solving light up. It's like giving yourself an out-of-body experience where you're no longer drowning in the wave of criticism, but standing on shore, observing its size and shape. Try this today. The next time criticism lands, mentally frame it as if you're writing a case study about someone else's experience. the subject received feedback that their approach lacked creativity. They noticed a surge of defensiveness followed by curiosity about potential blind spots. That tiny shift from "I'm under attack" to "this is a human reacting to feedback" changes everything. The critic's words become data to analyze, not arrows to dodge. Even Epictetus, surrounded by the chaos of ancient Rome, knew the power of perspective. He taught that suffering comes not from events, but from our interpretation of them. By stepping into the role of observer, you reclaim the director's chair in your own life. The script might include harsh lines, but you get to decide how the character responds calmly, wisely, with the quiet confidence of someone who knows the difference between a passing scene and the entire story. Ever notice how some criticism feels like a pebble dropped in your pocket, barely noticeable, while other critiques hit like an anvil, threatening to crush you under their weight? That's where Marcus Aurelius' Proportionality Test comes in. A simple but game-changing practice of asking two questions. What's the actual weight of this critique? And what's the weight I'm choosing to give it? The gap between those answers is where Stoic wisdom thrives. Take the restaurant owner who obsessed for days over a 1-star Yelp review calling her lasagna too salty. Meanwhile, she brushed off her accountant's warning about cash flow with a wave of her hand. Notice the mismatch. The critique with real consequences, the one that could sink her business, got less attention than the passing gripe of a stranger. Marcus would call this misplaced gravity. When we inflate minor slights and deflate serious feedback based on emotion, not logic, here's how to recalibrate. Picture a balance scale. On one side, place the criticism itself. On the other, place the stakes. A snippy comment from a coworker about your coffee mug. That side barely tips, but your manager's feedback about missed deadlines, that's weighted. It carries career implications. The goal isn't to ignore all petty critiques, it's to stop giving them equal real estate in your mind as the ones that truly shape your path. History's full of proportionality in action. When Thomas Edison's lab burned down, destroying years of work, he reportedly said, "All our mistakes are now ashes." We can start fresh. Contrast that with how he handled a journalist's jab about his failed inventions. He laughed it off. Fire, high stakes, gossip, noise. That's the Stoic filter. Does this feedback affect my character, my purpose, or my survival? If not, it's whether let it pass through. Try this tonight. Grab 2 sticky notes. On the first, write the harshest critique you've received this week. On the second, list its actual consequences 6 months from now. Most of the time, you'll find the first note crumpled in the trash by morning. The critic's words might have felt heavy in the moment, but their lasting weight often feather-light. As Marcus scribbled in his journal, ask of everything, what are you in essence? What's your true worth? A Yelp review is someone's fleeting mood. A performance review, that's data. Train yourself to weigh them differently, and suddenly, criticism stops feeling like a barrage and starts feeling like a sieve, separating grit from gold. There's a peculiar power in stillness, in meeting criticism, not with a counterattack, but with what Seneca called the quiet dignity of a sage. Picture standing at the edge of a lake when someone hurls a stone into the water. The instinct is to throw one back, creating more ripples, more noise. But what if you simply let the water settle on its own? That's the essence of this practice, recognizing that not every boo deserves an encore. Take the composer who received a scathing letter from a rival mocking his latest symphony. Instead of firing off a rebuttal, he framed the letter and hung it above his piano. When asked why, he simply said, "Some notes aren't worth playing." That silence wasn't weakness, it was a masterclass in restraint. Seneca wrote that the greatest remedy for anger is delay, but he might have added that the greatest reply to pettiness is often no reply at all. History's wisest figures understood this. When Gandhi faced brutal insults during his protests, he'd smile faintly and keep walking. not because he didn't hear the slurs, but because he refused to let them dictate his rhythm. Modern research backs this up. Studies on workplace conflict show that when one party stops engaging, the escalation often fizzles out like a flame without oxygen. The critic, deprived of a reaction, moves on, but here's the nuance: Stoic silence isn't passive. It's a deliberate choice to conserve energy for what matters. Think of a chess grandmaster who ignores a taunt from the crowd. Their focus isn't on the noise, it's on the board. Every moment spent defending against trivial critiques is a moment stolen from creating something meaningful. So how do you practice this? Start small. Next time someone critiques your taste in music, your outfit, or your coffee order, try this experiment. Respond with a polite, interesting, and change the subject. No justification, no debate. Watch how quickly the moment passes, then scale it up. When a colleague dismisses your idea in a meeting, nod once, then return to your notes. Silence, wielded wisely, becomes a shield. Seneca put it bluntly: what need is there to weep over parts of life? The whole of it calls for tears. His point: life's too short to dignify every barb. Some critiques are like graffiti on a passing train, loud, fleeting, and utterly unworthy of your brushstrokes. The sage silence isn't about suppression, it's about sovereignty. It's the unshakable calm of knowing your worth isn't up for debate, and that sometimes the most powerful response is to let the echo of their words fade unanswered. Socrates had a brilliant method for handling gossip that works just as well for modern criticism. He called it the triple filter test. When someone rushed to tell him something unflattering about a friend, he'd hold up a hand and ask, "Is what you're about to say true? Is it kind? Is it necessary?" If the answer to any of those was no, he'd refuse to engage. That same filter can transform how you process harsh feedback today. Think of criticism like raw ore mixed with dirt, rubble, maybe even toxic elements, but occasionally flecked with genuine gold. Your job isn't to swallow the whole chunk or toss it aside in disgust. It's to sift patiently until you spot the tiny, valuable fragment worth keeping. Take the software engineer whose client blasted her code as sloppy and amateurish. Her first reaction, defensive rage, then she applied Socrates' filters. True, well, she had rushed that last update. Kind? Absolutely not. The delivery was brutal. Necessary? Surprisingly, yes, the client's business was at stake. That brutal critique contained a sliver of gold. She needed to slow down on deadline crunches. The rest, the insults, the tone, was worthless rock she could discard. This is the feedback filter in action, separating the signal from the noise without getting cut on the sharp edges. Here's how to practice it. Next time criticism stings, grab a notebook and draw 3 columns: true, kind, necessary. Under true, jot any verifiable facts. You missed 3 deadlines this quarter, stays. You don't care about this team, gets questioned. The kind column exposes the speaker's intent. Was this feedback given with respect or just to wound? The necessary column is where the gold often hides. Does pointing out my repetitive word choices improve the manuscript or just nitpick? Even the harshest critique usually has one usable nugget if you're willing to pan for it. Consider a famous example when a young Theodore Geisel, later known as Dr. Seuss, had his first children's book rejected with the note, "This is too different from what sells." He could have quit. Instead, he filtered it. True, the market did favor conventional stories. Kind, brutally honest, necessary. Yes, it pushed him to double down on his unique style rather than conform. That rejection wasn't just feedback, it was a compass pointing him toward his legendary career. The Stoics knew this truth long before psychologists coined the term selective attention. Epictetus taught that the essence of philosophy is distinguishing what's mine from what's not. Criticism will always come mixed with someone else's baggage, biases, and bad moods. Your power lies in extracting only what serves your growth and leaving the rest on the ground where it belongs. So next time harsh words fly your way, channel Socrates, grab your mental sieve, shake out the debris, and pocket that one gleaming speck of truth, the rest. Just let it crumble like dust in your fingers. Democritus, the ancient philosopher known as the laughing sage, had a peculiar habit. Whenever he witnessed human folly, from petty squabbles to pompous self-importance, he'd burst into laughter. Not cruel mockery, but the kind of warm chuckle you might reserve for watching a kitten chase its own tail. There's a hidden genius in this approach when facing criticism. Picture your harshest critic suddenly wearing a bright red clown nose. Their furrowed brow, their dramatic finger pointing, it's all still there, but now framed by a rubber honk at the end. Does the critique lose its validity? Not necessarily, but the emotional charge that deflates like a whoopee cushion. This isn't about dismissing feedback or ridiculing the speaker. True Stoic humor isn't a weapon, it's a pressure valve. When a co-worker nitpicks your presentation with the intensity of a Shakespearean villain, imagine them delivering those lines in a silly voice. The content of their feedback might still hold value, but the theatrical delivery stops feeling like a personal indictment. Neuroscience backs this up. Laughter triggers the release of endorphins, dialing down stress hormones and creating mental space to assess criticism objectively. Take the stand-up comedian who faced hecklers nightly. Instead of firing back, she'd mimic their tone in a cartoonish squeak. "Your jokes suck" became "Your jokes suck" in a tiny mouse voice. The crowd would roar, the tension shattered, and the heckler, disarmed, often joined the laughter. That's the alchemy of Democritus' approach. You're not laughing at the person, but at the universal human tendency to take ourselves too seriously. Even Marcus Aurelius, who carried the weight of an empire, journaled about the absurdity of posturing. Alexander the Great and his mule driver both died in the end. Does it matter now who gave the orders? Try this today. Next time criticism lands, mentally add a playful soundtrack, maybe circus music or a kazoo solo to the scene. Watch how the mood shifts. The critique itself might still warrant attention, but the accompanying drama becomes far less gripping. The Stoics didn't advocate for indifference. They practiced lightness, a way to hold truths firmly without being crushed by their weight. After all, if life's inevitable blunders and critiques are like rain, you can either rage at every drop or learn to dance in the puddles. Clown shoes optional. Critics come and go, but your character accumulates like sediment over time, layer by layer, choice by choice. Marcus Aurelius faced relentless political attacks during his reign, yet his private journals reveal no fantasies of retaliation. Instead, one line appears again and again. "The best revenge is to be unlike those who wrong you." That's the long game in action, recognizing that while words dissolve like salt in water, your integrity remains an indelible mark on the world. Think of a river carving through rock. The water's momentary turbulence, the splashes, the eddies means nothing compared to the slow, certain path it carves over centuries. Criticism is the splash, your response is the current shaping the stone. When a rival mocks your work, you might fantasize about humiliating comebacks. But what if you channeled that energy into creating something so undeniably excellent it renders their pettiness irrelevant? History remembers the builder, not the heckler. Consider the scientist whose groundbreaking theory was ridiculed as childish fantasy by peers. Instead of firing off angry rebuttals, she spent a decade gathering irrefutable evidence. By the time she presented her final findings, the critics had fallen silent, not because she silenced them, but because her work had outgrown their skepticism. That's the power of compound growth in character. Every time you choose patience over pettiness, mastery over malice, you're depositing into an account that pays dividends long after petty insults have bankrupted themselves. Here's a challenge. Pull out your phone and scroll to a critical comment or email from 6 months ago. Notice how the sting has faded. Now imagine yourself 6 years from now. Will this moment even register? Contrast that with the legacy of your actions, the mentor you became, the projects you completed, the quiet dignity you modeled. Those are the things that endure. Try this tonight. Light a candle and write 2 letters. The first is to your present self, detailing today's criticism. The second is from your future self, the 80-year-old version of you looking back. What would that wise voice say about this momentary friction? Chances are they'd chuckle gently and remind you, we weathered storms that felt like hurricanes at the time, but now, just breezes that shaped our sails. The critic's words are sparks, your character is the anvil. Let them strike, you'll only grow harder, sharper, more unbreakable. Seneca once wrote that admitting a mistake should be as effortless as a tree shedding dead leaves, no drama, just natural correction. That's the heart of the Stoic Apology. When you're wrong, own it with the same ease you'd correct a mispronounced word. No cringing, no over-explaining, just a clear-eyed, I see it, I'll fix it, that disarms critics and preserves your dignity. Picture a seasoned chef who accidentally oversalts a dish. Instead of blaming the recipe or the ingredients, they simply say, my mistake, let me remake this for you. The apology isn't self-flagellation, it's course correction in motion. History offers a masterclass in this approach. When Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau faced backlash for an outdated yearbook photo, his response was textbook Stoic. I take responsibility for my actions. This is a lesson for me, and I intend to learn from it. No excuses, no theatrics, just acknowledgement so swift it sucked the oxygen out of the scandal. Contrast that with public figures who twist themselves into knots, denying the undeniable, digging holes so deep they never climb out. Seneca would have called this adding shadows to shadows, layering shame upon error until the original misstep looks minor compared to the clumsy cover-up. The magic lies in reframing criticism as a gift. Imagine holding up a mirror covered in dust. The person pointing out the smudges isn't attacking you, they're handing you a chance to see clearly. That's the spirit behind "Thank you for the mirror." It's not about accepting every critique as valid, it's about recognizing that even harsh feedback can reveal blind spots. A tech CEO I admire does this brilliantly. When an intern pointed out a flaw in his product demo, he didn't deflect or minimize, he simply said, "You're right. That should work smoother, let's fix it together." The room's tension dissolved into respect. Here's how to practice this. Next time you're caught in an error, try the 3-sentence rule. 1. I see what went wrong. 2. Here's how I'll address it. 3. What else should I consider? That's it. No groveling, no ego, just a surgical acknowledgement that turns critics into collaborators. Because the Stoics knew a secret most miss, admitting fault isn't weakness, it's the ultimate power move. It takes the weapon out of their hands and puts the pen back in yours, letting you write the next chapter on your terms. After all, even the sturdiest ship adjusts its sails when the wind shifts. The captain who refuses, that's the one who ends up on the rocks. Imagine waking up each morning and arming yourself with the one tool that can transform criticism from poison to medicine, a simple notebook and a 7-day challenge. Here's how it works. Every evening, you'll write down one critique you faced that day, no matter how small. Maybe it was your partner questioning your parenting, a stranger's snide remark online, or even your inner voice whispering you're falling behind. Then, like a Stoic alchemist, you'll reframe it, not by sugarcoating, but by distilling the raw emotion out until only the useful residue remains. Epictetus put it perfectly: no man is free who isn't master of himself. This drill isn't about dodging criticism, it's about reclaiming your freedom to choose its meaning. Take day 1, you jot down, "My boss said I lacked initiative in the meeting." Your first draft might seethe with defensiveness. Now apply the Stoic sieve. Is there truth here? Maybe you were holding back ideas. Could this critique serve you? Absolutely, it's a nudge to speak up. By day 3, you're dissecting "my cooking is bland" from a relative, initial reaction, irritation, reframed. They're craving more flavor, time to experiment with spices. The critique hasn't changed, but your relationship to it has. You're no longer a passive target, you're an active interpreter, extracting nutrients from even the bitterest feedback. History's great thinkers thrived on similar exercises. Benjamin Franklin tracked virtues like order and humility in a daily ledger. Marcus Aurelius filled journals with harsh self-assessments, not to berate himself but to refine his character. What makes this challenge potent is its compounding effect. By day 7, you'll notice something startling. Critiques that once ruined your morning now feel like puzzles to solve, not wounds to nurse. A musician who tried this drill told me his breakthrough came on day 5, when a harsh review of his album stopped feeling like an attack and started reading like a roadmap. Too repetitive became explore new chord progressions. The magic lies in the repetition. Neurons that fire together wire together, and each night's reframing session trains your brain to default to curiosity instead of defensiveness. Set a reminder on your phone. Stoic Critique Lab 5 minutes of alchemy. Keep the entries short but potent. Over time, you'll build a portfolio of transformed criticisms, proof that you're not at the mercy of others' words, but the architect of their meaning. As Epictetus reminded us, freedom isn't the absence of criticism, it's the mastery of your response, and that's a skill no one can critique away. Think of these 22 Stoic practices not as rigid armor plating that weighs you down, but as flexible chainmail, each link a skill that moves with you, yet together forms an unbreakable defense. Resilience isn't a fortress you hide inside. It's a muscle you train day after day, critique after critique. Every harsh word you metabolize, every unfair judgment you calmly dissect, adds another layer to that mental toughness. Seneca wasn't just waxing poetic when he said, "Fire tests gold, criticism tests brave men." He was handing you a lens to reframe every critique as a forge, a chance to temper your character in flames that would melt lesser metals. So here's your challenge. Don't just file these ideas away. The Stoics didn't philosophize in theory. They lived their principles in the grit of daily life. Pick one practice this week, maybe the Socratic filter to sift gold from gravel, or the view from above to shrink petty remarks to their true size. Test it in your next staff meeting, your family dinner, even the comment section. Notice how it feels to stand in the arena of criticism, not as a gladiator fighting for survival, but as a blacksmith calmly choosing which sparks will shape you. The world will never run out of opinions, but with these tools you'll never run out of ways to meet them, not with brittle defiance, but with the quiet strength of someone who knows the difference between noise and nuance. The arena awaits. Step in.